Since 1987, the Final Fantasy video game franchise has delighted fans all over the world. Square Enix's epic role-playing game series has sold over 100 million copies worldwide. Now, join us as we look back at all the magic, beauty, tragedy, mythology, and wonder of this beloved franchise. This is the Lifestream podcast, Final Fantasy Retrospective Series.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Lifestream podcast, Final Fantasy Retrospective. This is the second episode in an epic journey covering the entire expanse of the Final Fantasy franchise. And joining me on this monumental quest are JasonTandro.
Howdy, hey.
And Ryushikaze.
Yargle Bargle.
This podcast series is a love letter to the terrific Final Fantasy video game series. Throughout the series, we will be playing and providing in-depth reviews for nearly every Final Fantasy game released in the West. We also will be playing games from the associated franchise, such as the Chrono games, the Kingdom Hearts games, and the Bravely Default games.
Of which there is currently only one.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
Of which there's currently only one Bravely Default game.
Well, technically there is a second one in Japan and should be heading to the West very soon.
Yeah. But you also have to remember some of the other spin-off games that aren't properly Final Fantasy, but like Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon.
Yeah, I have considered putting that in the list, but I don't actually own any of those games, so... And I think only one of them has actually come to the West, right?
Chocobo's Dungeon 2 is the only one we got.
Yeah.
That said here, this episode is covering Final Fantasy II. Final Fantasy II was developed by Square initially for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Released in Japan on December 17th, 1988. It never actually saw an official Western release until the release of Final Fantasy Origins for Sony PlayStation. Final Fantasy Origins was released in the West on April 8th, 2003. It was directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi, produced by Masafumi Miyamoto. Am I pronouncing that right, Ryo?
Hold on.
I'd be thinking Miyamoto.
Is it Miyamoto? Okay. Co-designed and... Ryu, do you want to actually do this?
Alright. Co-designers, Hiromichi Tanaka, Akitoshi Kawazu, Koichi Ishii. The character, title logo, and graphic designer was Yoshitaka Amano, as usual. Other graphic designers included Kazuko Shibuya and Ryoko Tanaka. Programmers were Narsir Gebeli, Naoko Okabe, and Katsuhisa Higuchi, one of which didn't give a shit, but I don't know which. There's a story there later, but anyways. Assistant programmers, Hiroshi Nakamura and Takeyoshi Ito. The co-writer was Kenji Terada, the composer was Nobuo Uematsu.
Except for the one freaking song where they stole Tchaikovsky, but whatever.
Tchaikovsky's
I'll get
in the
to that
public
in a minute.
domain. You can't steal from him anymore. Besides, he's way dead. Sound designer, Masanori Hoshino.
Thank you very much, Ryu. Development for Final Fantasy II. Final Fantasy II actually marks the first time in the series that players could not create their own characters and there is no job system. The reason for this is because Final Fantasy II was intended to be a more story-driven game than the original Final Fantasy, and to that end, specific characters were tailored for the story. Also, Square wanted the game system to allow players to grow these characters in any method that they chose. Interestingly, there were plans for an American release of Final Fantasy II back in 1990. Work had begun on an English translation after the success of the original Final Fantasy. A beta version was produced and the game was advertised in several Squaresoft trade publications. However, due to the age of the game and the fact that the Super Nintendo had arrived, plans to release the English localization were scrapped, although the beta still exists.
Final Fantasy Ultra, I think they were going to call it, or something like that. It was the original name.
Yeah, it was some kind of bizarre title. I can't recall what exactly it was. Ryu, do you happen to remember what exactly it was going to be called?
It was not Final Fantasy Gaiden. They actually
Shadow over Palamecia.
Dark Shadow over
Final Fantasy
Dark Shadow over Palakia is what they've got listed here. Yeah. Okay. Have you ever played the beta, Ryu?
Bits and pieces. I've played the original. I've played the translation. There's not much of a difference. It just, you're dealing with NES translations on actual, and this was unlike the fan translations that have used memory tricks to give them a lot more space for translations. It had to deal with being an NES card.
Interesting. So when you're saying that, I assume that there was probably memory problems, like with like you couldn't put in a full English translation and such because of the memory problems.
It's not that you couldn't put in a full English translation. It's specifically that they had to fit all of their translations within a certain pre-allocated segment of memory, which is a problem that actually still was a problem up through the Game Boy Advance era and a little bit on the DS era, because as much as translations don't actually, like, text doesn't take up a whole hell of a lot of space, pointers do, and the pointers have to be in a specific place. So you're getting a translation that has to be very specifically tailored around an existing set of pointers that were configured for the Japanese text.
And for those wondering why I keep referring to Ryu, Ryu is a massive Final Fantasy II fan and a fan of the games that it spun off the Saga series.
Yes.
Not to mention an encyclopedia of all things. The series were just like, how many times in this podcast, not just the retrospective, but in the regular podcast, have you been like, Ryu, do you know this? Oh yeah, I've done that. You could be like, did you ever play, the midget wrestling version of Final Fantasy that was only available in Okinawa? Oh yeah, I went there once.
Please. That was in Fukuoka, not Okinawa.
Oh, my fault.
So, Final Fantasy II has seen ports to several systems. Those include WonderSwan Color, Sony PlayStation, and of course the PlayStation Network via Final Fantasy Origins, Game Boy Advance via Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls, PlayStation Portable via the Final Fantasy 20th Anniversary compilation, and iOS and Android platforms. Ryu, do you want to go ahead and take this next piece of it here?
Okay, so Final Fantasy is not like any of the other Final Fantasies in a way, beyond that other Final Fantasies try and make their mark, and that's because it uses a wholly different system. Basically, every other Final Fantasy, no matter how much they've changed about the leveling system, there's always been specifically a leveling system with class and character levels. Saga doesn't. Final Fantasy II and Saga don't have that. They've got stat up gains. And so what that is this isn't the official acronym. This is just a mnemonic, if you will, but it's stat attempted gets advancement. So if you use your fists, the fist gets stronger. If you punch somebody, you get stronger, you get more agile. If you get hurt, you get tougher, you get more HP. That's the system that Final Fantasy II and Saga uses. Now, Saga is much more coherent and fleshed out than Final Fantasy II, because it was the first attempt. So there are problems with Final Fantasy II's version of it. I'm not going to pretend that there aren't. But the fun thing is, Akitoshi Kawazu's been on the Saga series the entire time, and he was the one who created Final Fantasy II. And so he has the design philosophy of tabletop RPG roots, of never quite knowing what's going to happen. And sometimes that doesn't quite work out, and then sometimes it's glorious. Like in the later Saga series, there's something called the Spark system, where you can randomly get new abilities in the middle of the battle and change the tide of the fight.
Interesting. So, knowing that you're such a big Saga fan, Ryu, did Kawazu continue to develop the Saga series?
He did. I don't remember. I think he is actually not on the current Saga, but he's on Legend of Legacy, which is Saga in all but name.
Interesting. So yeah, I think that brings us to talk a little bit about Final Fantasy II's gameplay.
Oh boy, who wants to go first?
So, in an effort to give the game a fair shake, because I feel like the gameplay is a divisive element of Final Fantasy II, to say the least. So in an effort to give it a fair shake, I'll go ahead and let Rio go ahead and express his thoughts about the gameplay of the game first.
I do love the idea, I'd have to, I love the Saga series, of random growths based on what you actually did in battle. If you use a weapon that requires you to be agile to do damage, your agility will grow. If you use your magic and your MP will grow. If you get hit, your stamina and your health will grow. Other than that system, the actual gameplay is exactly like any other Final Fantasy, except for the fact that it did have MP way back when, because it had to deal with the growth system for the spells. But it's not actually the battle system everybody has a problem with in the game. It's that growth system.
Right.
And I can understand a lot of where people are coming from, because, again, this was the first attempt. They didn't get it quite right. They set some of the conditions for a guaranteed level up. So it's both. If you don't know what you're doing, it's too hard to speed up. But if you do know what you're doing, it is trivially easy to cheese. Which I think is going to explain the difference between your guys' experience of the system and my experience of the system. Because you guys took, what? I think 60 hours or so to complete this game?
Yeah, for me it was about 67, I think.
Closer to 40, but more or less.
I did in less than 20. I did a little bit of grinding at the beginning, and then I just ran like crazy, punching everything to death, and having my allies hit my party members because the enemies couldn't hit me anymore. My stats were ludicrously imbalanced. It was great. Literally, at the end of the game, I had 99 agility on basically all three of my regular characters.
So would it be safe to assume that you basically ran with a four monk party through the
No, I
whole
ran
game?
with a 3 monk and then one person who whacked people with a sword. not the enemies.
Basically a utility backup.
Oh no! He wasn't utility. He was their personal trainer. Whoever he was or she was, because I had Layla hitting them too. But it was like, oh, they aren't getting stamina ups. Hit them. Yeah, hit guy now. Now Maria. Hit Furion more. His HP. I mean, I still didn't have the highest HP at the end of the game. I only had about 2,000, but
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I guess I should say that I think gameplay probably isn't the correct way to express the beef with the game. It is the level up system. It's not the gameplay itself. So just to clarify that, the gameplay feels just like the original Final Fantasy from that respect as far as the battle system is concerned. And as far as the basic functions of traveling around the world map and going into town, so on and so forth, all of that is very much the same as any other Final Fantasy, really. at least any other of the early Final Fantasies. It's the leveling system that's the bear in the room. Jason, how about you?
I respectfully disagree. I had a problem with the entire game as far as gameplay goes because the leveling system was the elephant in the room. I agree. The way you grew, I did not care for that at all. I was able to make it easy on myself about halfway through when I discovered a bunch of cheap exploits. Like, for instance, I was playing the Origins version and they didn't patch out you can enter multiple commands. So I heard click, click, click back, click, click, click back for about 20 hours. And I got my levels shot right up, but that was not the only problem that I had. I also had a problem with the world map because it was open and amazing. It felt like a really full world at first, but then there was nowhere else to go about halfway through the game. And the combat itself, again, is core Final Fantasy, but it felt boring. It felt uninspired. Even the dungeons, even the ones that had cool concepts, were basic labyrinths with no real spark to them. I think, and granted, Final Fantasy 1's dungeons weren't that great, but at least they had character. These ones didn't really. But again, the leveling system is the big bear, as you put it, and it's doable with exploits, but if you have to exploit to get the most out of a gameplay system, it's not doing its job.
You don't have to exploit it. It just speeds things up greatly. And the thing is, you don't actually have to grind. Like, except for a little bit in the beginning, you can just run straight through this game.
Yeah.
And I think grinding is a trap that a lot of people fall into.
See, unfortunately for me, I feel like as a player of the Final Fantasy series, it's a lesson that I've learned is that if you don't level grind, you end up running into some serious challenges in the games. So I try to level grind to stay ahead of said challenges. Final Fantasy II does not enable you to do that. And it's frustrating. The only time that I really felt like I felt super compelled to grind Ryu was to exploit the
frog glitch?
The snow vehicle minigame. That was the only time I felt it was necessary to do a heavy deal of level grinding, and that is super frustrating with this, because for those that have never played Final Fantasy II before, not only do you have to use, let's say, if you want to increase your damage with a sword, then you have to use the sword, and you have to keep using the sword in order to raise your level with the sword. It's the same way with magic. So there's no fire, then Fyra, then Fyraga, or Fire 2, Fire 3, so on and so forth. You buy the fire spell, or you get the fire spell from as a prize from winning a battle, and then your method of raising that spell to do more and more damage is to repeatedly use the fucking spell.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. Because there's really no way of knowing how well you're doing with the spell while you're actually in battle. So you don't really know if you're actually raising the level of the spell or not, because it seems that it is completely random how many fucking times you have to use the spell.
It's never random. You can actually track the progress of your spell levels in every version.
Well, you can after battle, but you can't. There's no way of knowing in battle how many times you have to use it to level it up.
So you're basically wishing that there was the meter in the middle of battle.
Yes, or something that would indicate to you that you've leveled up that spell, because you can sit in a battle and literally just cast a spell on yourself over and over and over and over again until your MP's wiped out. And then you get out of it and you realize that you probably didn't have to use up all of your MP to level up the spell, or if you did use up all your MP to level up the spell, you didn't level it up at all. It only moved like a quarter through the bar.
The thing is, MP is carried, or the spell XP is carried over between levels, so you've never actually wasted it.
I'm not sure I follow you, Ryu.
So after you level a spell up, it doesn't zero out the XP. So it just gets applied to the next level.
See, I guess in my experience, I don't see that. It seems like every time I do that, it just levels it up to one level, and that's it.
Yeah, respectfully, I mean, I had the same problem. I mean, there was 1 or 2 times where I would see it on like a certain number, and then I would do it like 100, 200 times in one battle, and then it would either go to 0 or go back to that same number, but I never saw it go up or down from there after the level up. And it never leveled up more than 1 per battle, that's for certain.
And that's...
I do know that the XP scale is slightly logarithmic, which might be the issue.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Well, and this is the thing. We're not saying it doesn't have a method to its madness. We're saying the method is overly complex for Joe Blow gamer. And even if you are the kind of person who enjoys this kind of logarithmic statistics, it's annoying when you're in the middle of battle and you don't know for damn certain what your attacks are going to be, or if your spells are going to do any damage whatsoever in some cases. I had the biggest freaking problem with spells towards the end of the game when I had Maria, who was my magic user, and she had a level 10 Ultima spell, supposedly the strongest spell in the game. And I know Ultima is based on not just Ultima's level, but the level of all your other spells. So all my other spells were in the 10 to 12, in some cases up to 16 range. But she was still only dealing about 500 damage with this ultimate spell. It was more effective to give her 2 swords and just have her clobber things to death with the boys. I mean, that does not a good gameplay make.
That I can explain, and that's why I said up at the top that one of the programmers didn't give a shit. Because Ultima was supposed to be way, way fucking more powerful than it was. However, the person who coded it fucked up. And so it deals ridiculously little damage unless you've maxed everything out. And only after they and they fixed it a little for the remakes, but in the actual original version, the person who created it was asking you change it. It's like, no. And so they tried to get it, but he hadn't counted his code, so they couldn't figure out what the hell it was.
So, let me ask, just in your general experience, what's the most damage you've ever seen Ultima do?
Ultima, if you've maxed everything out, can do 99999. But I don't think it's worth it. I honestly think Ultima's a trap.
So I've never actually maxed out any of my spells. What level do they actually max out at?
16.
So you can't go beyond 16 at all?
You can, but it doesn't actually change the spell level or the MP cost. So
Okay. So 16 is the optimum high level then?
Yes.
Okay. And that explains why you have to get the Toad spell to level 16 to exploit the little snowmobile game. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, at some point the magic just becomes a moot point anyway, because if unless you're super obsessed with grinding out everything, it becomes a moot point because the spells just don't do enough damage anymore. So at some point your physical attacks or what just takes over instinctually. And
yeah, I mean, it was the same in Final Fantasy as well.
I will say...
Oh, agreed. Totally agree.
Yeah. No question there. We're not arguing. I will say it is worth maximizing Toad just because I found it hilarious when I was fighting these supposedly strong enemies like the dragons and the King Behemoth and Tiamat, and I would cast Toad and they would just run away from battle.
I don't recall having to fight Tiamat in Final Fantasy.
Tiamat is a secret battle.
It was a monster
it's a
in a
secret
box.
Battle, is that what you said?
She is a monster in a box guarding Thamasamune, one of the Genji items.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot. Yes,
Genji
you are correct. Yeah, totally forgot. But yes, I mean, for me, once you get the blood sword, forget about it. The blood sword pretty much can push you through everything at the end of the game.
Yeah, the blood sword is great. If I was not running the punch heavy investment, I probably would have done more with it than stick it on Leon and call it a day.
Just curious, Ryu, how long did it take you to max out your punching stats?
I lost track. It was somewhere probably 3/4 of the way through.
Interesting.
I literally used nothing but punch. And the reason I did stop training early on in the game was because I was having a very serious problem. I couldn't survive my own punches. And I said, okay, it's time to keep going.
See, I guess I keep falling into what you're referring to as a trap, because I played the 20th anniversary version on PSP, and I found a power walkthrough several years ago when I first played Final Fantasy II, because I was looking for a way to exploit the system. And this power walkthrough actually walks you through like 10 hours of grinding at the very start of the game to grind up your spells to at least level 8, and to obtain fire bows early in the game from the sergeants guarding Finn, and also grinding up I can't remember, I think it's mithril shields from the Adamantoise enemies around Finn. So I probably spent 15 hours level grinding right at the start of the game, and maybe I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
For me, it was not so much that I followed any particular power guide. It was that, like Vader said earlier, I have that Final Fantasy mindset that you have to level grind to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, think about a game like Final Fantasy V. Now, if you want to talk games that make grinding fun, that's one. I enjoy leveling up the jobs. I enjoy getting new abilities.
Though, is the jobs. It's not the actual levels that you need.
I agree, and that's precisely my point, though. When you're doing this in 2, when you are attempting to grind to get all your stats up, it is a complete uphill struggle. And yes, I know that there are methods, that there are strategies and so forth. But again, my concern, as we've established long ago, I'm not exactly as hardcore a gamer as you two guys, because you two are old schoolers and I'm a semi-old schooler. I think let's try to stay ahead of the curve. Let's try to get as strong as possible, as early as possible. And in this game, it's definitely possible, but you will pull your hair out while you're doing it.
For sure. Ryu, for people that are first-time players of the game, what would you recommend as far as doing level up?
Train naked until you can punch yourself to death in one hit, then just keep going. You can throw all your armor back on. You don't have to do a completely naked. You can still use weapons, but the trick to getting a guaranteed stat up is a defensive stat up is if you take more than half of your health in a single fight, and it doesn't have to be all at once, you will get a stamina upgrade. Stamina is what controls your HP level ups. The higher your stamina, the more HP you get. It also gives you a little bit of defense, so does agility. If you use lightweight weapons, your agility will go up. If you use heavy weapons, your strength will go up. They all have a chance of proccing randomly. Magic will only go up if you use your spells, and magic defense and spirit go up if you get hit by magic. But honestly, mag and spirit don't really matter. Mine were barely above starting, and I was taking almost no damage at the end of the game. And your equipment matters much more than your stats.
So would you recommend not dicking around with magic at all?
Pick up some magic. Pick up, heal or cure, Esuna, teleport. Pick up your utility stuff. Don't go DPS with magic. It can't compete.
Totally agree.
The only time I found magic useful at all in the game as a serious attack option was against the flan enemies.
Yeah.
That was pretty much the only time I really used it.
Undead enemies.
Yeah, that too. That whole fire was amazing against undead as always. So,
what were you about to say, Ryu?
Oh, I was saying, flans are always really good for that. But I was actually, by the time I was encountering Flans, I had enough agility, because agility is what controls your damage with your fists, if I remember correctly, in addition to your number of hits, or rather your level in fists determines your number of hits. Your agility is what is used to calculate the actual damage, which is then multiplied by the number of hits. Anyways, I had enough agility and that to just overpower their stupidly high defense through punching.
God.
Okay. Well, now that we've discussed the gameplay here, let's actually move into the story here. We'll start out by introducing the characters from Final Fantasy II, talk a little bit about them. So, as I mentioned previously, this is actually the first time in the series. Of course, this is only the second game in the series at that point. But this is actually the first time in the series where you had dedicated characters, where you weren't creating your own characters. The main character of the story is Firion, and along for the ride with him is Maria and Guy, and Maria's brother Leon is present only for the very beginning of the game, and then you do end up seeing him much later on.
It's not really a spoiler that who he is and what it is. It's actually like one of the most silly, oh, who could that be?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They are also joined, your party, since you have three characters for most of the three main characters for most of the game. Your party is joined by several other side characters that, for a time, you're joined by Minwoo, who is a white mage, Joseph, who is basically a monk, Gordon, who I guess you could consider a knight, Leela is you could consider as a thief or a pirate.
She's closest to the build of a thief. Later pirates in the series focus much more on STR than she does.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah. There's also Ricard, who is
actually wait.
He's actually.
I'm going to take that back a little. I'm going to say she looks more like ninja because she focuses on two weapons.
Oh, this is true.
Everybody else either uses one shield or just one.
We also we're joined by Ricard Highwind, who is actually the first Dragoon in the Final Fantasy series.
And also the last Dragoon in this game.
And just so happens that he does not have the jump ability.
Nope. Not yet.
And then there is Scott, who is a prince and apparently the older brother of Gordon, and I guess you could consider him a coward / knight as well.
No, Scott is not the coward. It's Gordon who is the coward.
Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry.
Scott is the one who is stuck in Finn and dies there.
You're correct. I'm sorry. I got it backwards. How did we feel about the characters in the game?
I thought it was interesting, first off, that we had characters who were so diverse. I mean, for a story-based game, they managed to throw a lot of interesting archetypes, which I have to say is a point in this game's favor. The story was actually pretty interesting. Just as a side note, there are different names in the version I played. I played Origins. Guy is called Gus. Minwoo is called Mindu. And the weirdest change, Richard is called Gareth in the Origins version for some reason.
Is Firion Firionel in that version as well?
No, it's Firion.
Okay. So, yeah, I was just curious, because the thing is, I think all of these names are the original Japanese names, except for Firion, who's, Minwoo is Mingwoo, which is very close, but Firion is Frioniel, not Firionel, Frioniel.
Sounds
Maria
like a Pokemon evolution.
Are all the same.
Yeah, I thought the cast was amazingly large for an early Final Fantasy game, especially the first time I played. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize there's this many characters in this game.
It's most interesting for the characters being recurring. Technically speaking, I think Final Fantasy 1 has more overall characters, but they're all seem like one and done. Like Princess Sarah.
Well, and
you talk to her once, and then fuck off and never see her again.
Well, and I guess I should also say that it's remarkable for the fact that you actually didn't have any side characters that actually joined your adventure in the original Final Fantasy.
That is true.
This is the first time that actually takes place as well.
That's actually an interesting fact. So you had, from a technical standpoint, the original Final Fantasy had 4 character slots, period. This one has 4 active character slots, but keeps the data of all but one of the people that we mentioned in the original version. And then Scott was added on in the remakes. Because all the people that we mentioned there are playable.
Interesting.
And all of them have their own stats, their own HP. So it not only... it doubled the number of playable characters that it was tracking, whether they were in your party... kept their stats upon entering and leaving, etc., etc., etc.
Interesting. So, the next piece of this here, I was going to just... we were going to go through the story of the game here. We are pulling the story from our friends at the Final Fantasy Wiki.
And our enemies. I mean, I think we have both there. So speaking of the Final Fantasy Wiki, I do want, right before we get into the story, there's a picture of the main cast of Final Fantasy II there, drawn by Amano, and I just want to point that out because on that image, Guy is wielding a gun.
Oh, he sure is.
Yep.
Are we sure that's not a crossbow?
No, I mean, it doesn't actually, it has a dart in it, but it doesn't actually have the bow. So it appears to be an arrow launcher.
Good call.
Looks like a freaking Nerf gun. My God.
Jason, do you want to go ahead and start out reading the story?
I'll give it a go. Alrighty. The story begins when Emperor Matthias of Palamecia summons forth monsters from hell in his quest to dominate the world. Firion, Maria, Guy, and Leon are orphaned when the Empire attacks Finn, and they are cut down by the Imperial soldiers as they flee. Firion, Maria, and Guy are rescued by forces belonging to the Wild Rose Rebellion, led by Princess Hilda, and are taken to Altair to be revived. Is it Altair? Altair?
It's Altair.
Altair? Okay. I'm thinking...
Which is, one of the weirdest crossovers this game ever made. I mean, the Assassin's Creed series wouldn't be out for another 2 decades.
I was just thinking that...
He's already in this game. Yeah. Somebody had to say it.
But Leon has gone missing. Though they are asked to join the rebellion, Hilda refuses due to their youth and inexperience. Despite this, Firion, Guy, and Maria return to Finn and find Prince Scott on his deathbed. He tells the party of Count Borgin's betrayal and asks them to encourage his brother Gordon, who is afraid to join the rebels. Scott asks them not to tell Hilda his feelings for her and gives them a ring to take back just before he dies. Returning Scott's ring convinces Hilda that Firion's group is strong enough to join the fight. She sends the group to Salamand in search of Mithril. Joseph, a member of the rebellion, was sent to search for it, but Hilda hasn't heard anything from him since. Hilda's right-hand man, Minwu, also joins the party for this mission. The party finds Joseph, but he is unwilling to give any information as the Palamecian Empire have kidnapped his daughter Nellie, and Borgin has threatened to kill her if Joseph helps the resistance. He tells them to go to Semet Falls and free her, along with the townspeople who have been enslaved in the mines. They do so and also rescue Paul, called Pavel in my version for some reason, a thief in the rebellion's employ. After defeating one of the Imperial sergeants, the party take the Mithril and make their way back to Altair. And I'm going to pass it over to whoever wants it.
Go ahead, Ryu.
After the weapons Tobul crafts Mithril equipment for the resistance, the party is dispatched to Bos. The Palamecian Empire have enslaved the residents and made them build a powerful airship known as the Dreadnought. It was built under the watchful eye of an Imperial known as the Dark Knight, who nobody can tell who it is despite the obvious character portrait hidden behind his mask. But he was replaced by Borgin after the loss of the Mithril. This gives the Resistance the perfect opportunity to destroy the Dreadnought before it is finished. However, just before the party reaches the massive airship from the Bosk sewers. The Dark Knight, who actually has not left Bosk after all, takes control of the airship and lifts off. The dreadnought attacks the cities of Poft, Alum, Gatria, and Altair. But miraculously, the secret base at Altair is unharmed. Minwu leaves the party to care for the ailing king. After talking to Sid, owner of the world's only other airship, Hilda and the party decide to obtain Sunfire from Kashuan Keep. To enter, they need either the goddess's bell or the voice of Kashuan. And despite having a Kashuan around, he literally isn't around, starting with this thing. I will call shenanigans on the plot at this point, because they don't tell you where the hell he is.
Oh, Lord.
And he's apparently he's been in the castle the entire time you're going to get the bell. But anyways, Joseph helps the party reach the snow cave with a snowcraft. The party retrieves the bell located within. By the way, his security for that snowcraft is ludicrous. I mean, it's a raft with skis on it, because I know the design of what he's doing, and he's felt the need to hide it in a waterfall cave miles south of... It's ludicrous. Anyways,
It's not the only thing in this plot that's ludicrous. We're just getting started with this.
But this is such a mundane ludicrosity, is my point. Like, the other things are more ludicrous, but that's sort of the, okay, we're dealing with mad wizards here. This is a man who decided, no, I have to hide my car in the next town over. I have to hide the snow tires 3 miles left of that. Left? Don't you mean west? No, left. Where's left? I don't know. It was left of where I was facing. I didn't keep track. That's the sort of weird madness that Joseph has in this thing.
That fetch quest sequence you just described is like 90% of this game.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I don't think the goddess bell to that is 90% of this game. It's
No.
Oh,
no,
I mean
the concept
such as that.
Oh, yeah. Going from getting the mithril and then going. Well, I think the quest chain starts from go destroy the fucking dreadnought, which yes does take up a big chunk of the game, because you go. I'd say about 40% of the actual plot of the game is from the start of let's destroy the dreadnought to okay, no, really, let's destroy the dreadnought.
Admittedly, though, the actual sequence in the dreadnought, which we'll get to here in a moment, is actually pretty damn fun.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
Joseph helps the party reach the snow cave with a snowcraft, and the party retrieves the bell located within. On the way out, Dorgan attacks the party, and although he is defeated, he sends a boulder after them. That's the what the fuckery that we were getting to.
Yes.
But there's still more, folks, because he literally just says, I had a boulder prepared! Joseph holds back the boulder to allow the party to escape and is crushed.
Question. If he had that from the beginning, why didn't he just use that from the beginning?
He had to take the time
You would
to prepare
still
the
be
boulder.
alive. Was he a load-bearing boss?
I honestly, I killed him so fast he wouldn't have had a chance to spring the trap on me.
I'm with you, Ryu.
He's not a
Borgin-
difficult fight.
No,
He's
like
the joke
Glass
enemy.
Joe at the beginning of Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Yeah. He did
Hey,
not
but
join
somebody
the
lost to
team.
Glass Joe. One person lost to Glass Joe, at least.
Yeah, that was Glass Joe. No one's sure how it happened. But when the dust settled, Glass Joe is the only person in the ring and the only person on the ground.
Good Lord, we're okay. I guess, Mike, do you want to take over from With Heavy Hearts?
Yep. With heavy hearts, but renewed determination to avenge Joseph, the party heads for the abandoned kingdom of Kashuan to retrieve the Sunfire. They enter the keep and find Gordon, who came on his own but was unable to make it past the monsters inside. He joins the party and helps them to locate, is it Eagle's Torch or Eagle's Torch?
Eggle, I think.
Eagle's Torch, the only vessel they can use to carry the Sunfire. The party defeats a red soul for the torch and retrieves the Sunfire.
I like how it mentions
As they
the
leave-
wrestle like it's a thing worth mentioning.
I'm sorry?
The red soul is literally just a random encounter that you haven't randomly encountered yet.
Well, yeah, but like this, the first time you encounter one, does not Maria remark, "Oh, it's a red soul" or something like that? Something stupid.
Yeah, no, it's like everybody knows what they are, and it almost feels like wait, why are you bothering us with this?
Okay, but again, getting back to the gameplay segment here, that's true of half the bosses. The Adamantoise, you fight him later. The Sergeant, you fight him later. The General, you fight him later in a random encounter.
My point, though, is not that he becomes a random encounter later. It's that he becomes a random encounter literally in the next dungeon.
Right.
Good point.
As they leave, they witness Sid's airship being captured by the Dreadnought, which then parks to replenish fuel supplies in the far south.
Or far north.
The party heads there, frees Sid and Hilda, who was on board Sid's ship, and throws the Sunfire into the Dreadnought's engine as directed by Sid. They meet the Dark Knight in the engine room, and Maria recognizes his voice. Surprise. But they have no time and escape just before the airship is destroyed. I actually love this sequence of the game. The whole infiltration into the Dreadnought, just the whole sequence of that game was a lot of fun, and probably one of my favorite parts of the story.
I have one line. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Oh, I love that you can either choose to present the pass and be allowed inside, or just say fuck it and go Wild Rose and kill the guy at guard.
Right. It's totally reminiscent. Well, I guess I should say Final Fantasy VII is reminiscent of Final Fantasy II in that regards when you storm the Shinra building.
Yeah.
and again in Final Fantasy VIII when you're doing the missile base thing.
Yes.
The whole sneaking into enemy headquarters is a grand tradition.
Oh yeah.
Now Final Fantasy VI in South Figaro. Same thing.
And not only the sneaking in, but the deciding to screw it up on purpose is also a grand tradition that this game started.
There's one thing that bugged me about the Dreadnought is that there wasn't a boss fight at the end, but the rest of the sequence was so freaking awesome. I didn't really care. I mean, and I will say the Dreadnought is one of like 3 good dungeons in the game. Like, it's one of the only dungeons that actually had theme, character, and a decent design to it.
Yeah.
Everything else was kind of blah. But, and I was going to say earlier, I have one line about the entire Dreadnought sequence. Aren't you a little short to be a rebel?
You're never too short to be a rebel. Did
we neglect to mention that Final Fantasy II inserts a heavy amount of Star Wars references?
Yes.
Did we mention that it's a Final Fantasy game? Why did we need to mention that it's a Final Fantasy game?
But Final Fantasy II is like straight Star Wars.
The translation leans even more heavily on Star Wars jokes than usual.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Though it does not actually have a Biggs and Wedge.
No,
the Biggs and Wedge would not actually come in until Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that they did not get added back into the later translation.
Yeah, it was actually... I can't recall, Ryu. What version of the game did you end up playing?
I played the GBA version.
Okay. Yeah, the Dawn of Souls version.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to the story here. The party returns triumphantly to Altair. Is that how you pronounce it?
Altair.
Yeah, that's so strange. I just want to pronounce it Altair because that's what it looks like.
All right, Stairmaster.
Only to learn the king is about to die. With his last breaths, he plans a 3-pronged attack on the Empire in an attempt to take back Finn. In his plan, Minwu heads to Mysidia to retrieve Ultima, the ultimate magic tome, which turns out
fucking useless.
So ultimate after all. Gordon takes command of the rebel army to attack Finn directly, and Furion's party heads to the island nation of Deist or Deist?
Deist.
How's it? Deist, to enlist the aid of the Dragoons. Hilda has started behaving strangely and retires to her chambers. The party accepts passage from Layla, who reveals that she is a pirate captain and tries to mug the party. When they defeat her and her crew, she is impressed and joins them. Bizarre.
No, I'm actually... I'd love for this to come up in more Final Fantasies, because it's only been in, 3 of them.
What, the random I'm going to join your party because you bested me?
Yeah. So it happened in 1, 2, and 5.
And I guess you could almost say that for 8 with the Guardian Forces.
Sort of, yeah. Well, specifically I want it more to be the pirate, specifically.
Oh, okay, I got you.
To go, I got a chance against the party. Oh, I have no goddamn chance against the party. Okay, cool.
I mean, theoretically, if you played the game of Final Fantasy IX from Steiner's perspective, that would happen.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened. Though by the time he joined up, it was less the pirates and more of the, well, god damn it, I'm recruiting you to rescue the fucking princess.
They reach Daced, but find that the Dragoons have fallen in battle and only a single wyvern remains alive. The beast is dying poisoned by the Empire. It gives the party the last wyvern egg, which the party drops in the healing spring at the bottom of Daced Cavern in order to incubate it and hasten its growth process. The party returns to Altair empty-handed, and Firion learns that the Hilda they rescued is a Lamia queen in disguise.
Hold it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hold it. We got to talk about this. I have to have a 5-second rant here. So, Uematsu is the master. He has created hundreds of beautiful pieces that absolutely define the series, okay? And what is the song that they play for this what should be a big reveal, but is not really that surprising, because nothing in this game is really that surprising? What they play is motherfucking Swan Lake. All this other music is amazing, like the boss theme that they added in Origins is so goddamn beautiful, and like the music belies how terrible the gameplay is. It almost makes up for it, but not quite. But in this pinnacle, like extremely important moment in the story, they just fucking pull an early NES like they always did and just use some classical music, because hey, the kiddies don't know what the hell that is.
Look, Uematsu needed to get to lunch. He had to knock out one last song. Nobody was checking him. He literally just threw in the Swan Lake music. And by the time he got back, they'd already started encoding it, and he didn't have the heart to tell him.
So, would this be the very first scene in a Final Fantasy game where a seduction takes place?
In that this is the first game in which there is a plot in which a seduction could take place? Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, it turns out Hilda is a Lamia queen. They soon learn the real Hilda is being held as a prize in the tournament at the Palamecian Colosseum. The party, with Gordon in tow, make haste to reach Hilda, defeating is it Behemoth? Is that how it's pronounced? Behemoth? At the Colosseum to earn Hilda as a prize. However, the Emperor, who is overseeing the match personally, dispatches the party and has them thrown in the dungeons. I call foul. That's bad form. They are saved by Paul, who unlocks their cell. Hilda and Gordon escape on their own while the rest of the party draws the guards' attention. Jason?
Hold on. Before we go on, I want to point out an amusing little tidbit about the seduction scene. Because of it, Furion's nickname in Japan is the Virgin. And it's a running gag. And it actually does show up in Dissidia if you're paying attention.
It totally reminds me of Cabin Boy. Have you ever seen Cabin Boy?
Yes.
Can't say, no.
And when I return, I will be a cabin man.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, amongst my friends, the Virgin is also the name we give to Squall, because when Quistis was throwing all those obvious "I want to have sex with you" signs, he was like, whatever.
Well, yeah, that just makes me want to kick him square in his fucking nut.
Like that, though. Like,
does.
You understand?
And this is to play devil's advocate, because I do want to kick Squall in the nuts. In his defense, that's subconsciously like fucking your sister.
Okay, I get that, but here's like me and my friend Jacob, who I mentioned Jacob like once every podcast because he and me are like that close. He and me both love this game, love the storyline, love the character of Squall, but even we both agree that was some beta level shit right there.
It wasn't even beta level. It was literally man going his own way. It was no. Screw you, woman who's interested in me. I want nothing to do with you.
Okay, anyways, good lord. Oh, and a fun fact about the rescue scene by Paul, that's something a bit more on topic, is one of the things I remember from the game trailers retrospective of Final Fantasy, which is also a very amazing. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
Fuck yes. I have to stop you right there because I need to say something about that.
Okay.
That game trailer's Final Fantasy retrospective series makes me fucking cry. And I am man enough to admit that it makes me cry. I fucking love that retrospective series so much. I actually ended up burning it to a couple of DVDs, and I periodically will pull it out and just watch it, just to get that feeling of nostalgia.
From the
that series gives me goosebumps, right? Makes me cry. I'm sorry?
From the quarter-pointed safe distance because it took out a restraining order on you?
God. Oh, lordy.
If you've never seen that game trailer's Final Fantasy retrospective series, you owe it to yourself to do so because it's very well put together.
It is good.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal.
And lovingly put together. You can tell a lot of love went into
Unlike
it.
this, we're just crapping out like.
We're having fun.
We're doing our thing, and I like our thing.
Yes.
But anyways, one thing that they brought up
after dark.
Carly's not here, but
listen, it's not. The After Dark just happens. You don't have to participate in it. It's just there. It's a natural consequence.
Good Lord. Okay. Ain't no getting off of this train we're on, even if it derails off the fucking tracks. Okay. No, but the thing
we're doing the thing I was trying to.
We're just. The thing that they mentioned about this particular scene was it was the first instance where they really utilized comedic sprite choreography, where they actually told the story with just the sprite movements when Paul or Pavel or whatever sneaks up, knocks on the wall, gets the guard's attention, then he turns around, and then he just comes on, and in my mind, he's Big Boss throat-slitting him and letting the guys out. That's
giving him the Colombian necktie.
No. He's using the fundamentals of CQC.
Oh, God.
He's still Big Boss, but he didn't actually bring a weapon with him. He's going for the S rank. No fatalities.
Non-lethal.
Yeah.
Jesus. By the time we're done all this crap, we'll have to do a freaking Metal Gear Solid retrospective, but we're not even a Metal Gear Solid site, so... Anyways, the Rebel Army plans an attack on Finn and encamps outside the town. Furion, Maria, Guy, and Leela lead the attack and defeat the Imperial Castellan Gatos, another person who will eventually become a random encounter, but what the fuck ever. Earning the rebels an important victory. However, Minwu and the Ultima Tome are nowhere to be found, so Hilda instructs the party to look for Minwu and retrieve the tome from the Mystidian Tower. After obtaining the crystal rod from the trials on the tropical island, by the way, to do that, you had to find a black mask and a white mask, but whatever.
Yeah.
The party heads for the tower,
the black and white masks are, in my opinion, the biggest bullshit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just a random fetch quest out of nowhere.
Okay, and there's multiple levels as to why this is bullshit, which I brought up in my live journal. Again, plugging something else, but I've been doing live journaling of all this retrospective stuff. So, Minwu went to get the Ultima Tome, so he had to get a crystal rod for that. Now, if there's only one crystal rod, bullshit, which apparently we find out later is not the case.
Yeah, there's multiple.
Why is this... There's multiple, fine. Okay, I can live with a world where there are multiple crystal rods. Why then do you have to fucking find 2 goddamn masks when apparently they're giving the shit out at Walmart? Why can't I go down to the bulk buy crystal rod
at Walmart? That's why you gotta collect the box tops.
That's what motherfucking layaway is for.
Wait, I think this is the first use of the MF word we've had on this podcast.
I am proud to be a part of that, okay? That's my contribution. That's my biggest contribution to date. But no, I'm not going to get no freaking Dakota ring. I do not need to be told for the 13th time, be sure to drink your Ovaltine. No, I want a simple, hey, you need... How come in Final Fantasy they never have what they need? Why is it, oh, we stored it at this dungeon, or we stored it over here? Why can't there be one single quest where it's like, hey, you need this to get into the dungeon? Here you go.
I do think the game would be improved if they had removed the mask sequence and just had it be that you had to get to Mysidia, which itself was protected, but it was Mysidia that had the crystal rod, they go, okay, you're worthy. Watch out for Leviathan. What's Leviathan? Womp.
The Leviathan was number 2 of the actually pretty decent design dungeons, although it was very straightforward. I just like the concept.
It is very well visually designed.
Exactly.
And a complete rip-off of Pinocchio.
Exactly. I even mentioned that.
Everything is a complete...
that too.
Pinocchio is itself ripping off a bunch of other things, including the story of Jonah and the Whale. I mean, that's why the hell Monstro.
Okay, shipwrecked and separated from Leela, the party works its way from Leviathan's innards to the mouth, where, with the help of Ricard Highwind the Dragoon, they are able to retake the ship by defeating a roundworm.
And goddammit, can I just say that I love the fact that they had a Dragoon in Final Fantasy II, but I hate the fact that he doesn't have the fucking jump ability, which is what makes the Dragoon so great.
Yeah, but again, they didn't have steel on the thieves in Final Fantasy. Actually, wouldn't for several games.
Well, right. But I rarely use Thief for anything anyway,
yes.
so
no, the
Dragoon is actually useful.
The thing is,
so.
My point is, there were leaps and bounds in this game, but they hadn't gotten to the specific leap that would allow the Dragoon to leap. Which would happen
I played the Origins version. He didn't even specialize in spears in my version. He used swords. So, I mean, that's even further removed.
Yeah, in this case, in the original, he literally is a Ryukishi, which is a dragon heavy armor knight, and the focus was on wyvern riding rather than jumping around like you're a goddamn dragon.
They head for the tower, which is number 3 of the actually decent design dungeons, with Ricard, best the Fire Gigas, Ice Gigas, and Thunder Gigas. The first 2 were laughably easy. The third was actually really tough. And find Minwu at the Chamber of the Seal. He has been waiting for Firian's group to arrive. Once they are there, he uses his life force to break the seal.
And let me just say that the tower, I think, is the first of the rest of these dungeons where the encounter rate is insanely high. The random encounter rate from this point forward is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least
oh my god. Every 2 steps.
And it's especially bad in Castle Pandemonium, which we'll be getting to here in a moment. So,
well, the Castle Pandemonium is the final part of the game, and you're literally in hell. So,
God. Back to you, Tim.
The party takes Ultima and returns to Fynn, but they discover that the towns of Altair, Gatria, Palum, and Poth have been utterly destroyed by a mysterious force known as the Cyclone. It threatens to tear the world asunder if the party cannot figure out how to stop it. Hilda tells them that a pendant can be used to call the wyverns in the chamber at the top of the castle, and Paul gives them the item. The pendant calls the young wyvern that was hatched at Daist, and they fly it into the Cyclone.
Cool concept, terrible dungeon.
Agreed.
It is very sort of lackluster. The interesting thing about the Cyclone is that it becomes the Tower of Zot. So, Final Fantasy IV takes a lot of ideas that Final Fantasy II did, and then actually does them in a good way. Because Cyclone is the flying castle, and the Tower of Zot is a much better flying castle than Cyclone.
Agreed.
So the idea of... I'll get up to it, but I will say in a quick summation, ambitious but rubbish.
Yeah.
Anyways, they infiltrate the fortress inside the storm and manage to defeat the Emperor. A victory celebration is held at Fynn, which involves some of the very silliest-looking dancing on the internet.
Yes.
But it is soon interrupted by the news that the Dark Knight, surprisingly, to no one, is Maria's long-lost brother, Leon, and he has crowned himself Emperor.
Dun,
Sid,
dun, dun.
dying somewhat anticlimactically after the attack on Palum, because he doesn't actually show up until his death sequence, gives the party his airship, and they fly to Palamecia. Leon refuses Maria's pleas and prepares to battle, but the Emperor returns from hell, now more powerful than ever, and reclaims his throne. Ricard sacrifices himself in battle against the Emperor, so that the others escape on the Wyvern.
Okay, stop it right here. I got a few things I have to say. First off, the problem with the open world in this game, like I mentioned at the beginning, was that by the time you got to anything interesting, you had already seen all of it. The airship is supposed to be the freeing point of the game. Even in Final Fantasy I,
Yes.
getting the airship, there was still half of a world to explore. By the time you get the airship in this game, all you have to do is the final dungeon.
Yeah, it's
to be fair,
completely
they did
fucking
give you the
put
ship,
to waste.
which gave you access to all the rest of the world. But they should have given that to you earlier too. And at least you can hire the airship, but
The airship's completely put to waste in Final Fantasy II.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I do like the idea that you can hire it to start out with. But they probably should have let you have the reins on it when you were going to look for the Dragoons.
Or even the Dreadnought.
No. Let's say right after you free it from the Dreadnought.
Yeah,
Okay,
because that would have been...
And that's right when you go start to find the Dragoons and then start going across the world. And it just would have been a better place to put it, I think.
Agreed. It's just, it seems like everything you get it when you no longer care about it. The ship you got, and it did open up the 2 other places there are in the world to see, Diced and the fucking tropical island, but you can get to Mysidia. You can get to everywhere in the world except for Diced, the tropical island, and Mysidia Tower right from the start of the game.
Right.
So, anyways, continue.
So, while we're on the subject of the world map, it is non-Euclidean as fuck.
You mean the fact that it goes, like, it breaks the borders and...
Yes. All the other Final Fantasies try to attempt and, act like they're, on a sphere and not actually, in this weird, bizarre, self-contained demiplane. But no, if you go northwest enough from Fynn, you show up on the southeastern part of the map, which you can then take all the way up to the desert of Palamecia. Which, if you can go past it, it's actually bordered all around by mountains, so you can't actually do this. But you could keep going north to Kashuan, then you could keep going back north, and you'd be on the same latitude as Fynn and Altair where you'd started.
Exactly. I mean, if you want a fun time, set the map settings to globe and then watch it and then move around while the globe is displayed, and you'll see stuff just appear out of nowhere. That's kind of funny to see.
Yeah.
Lord. Anyways, we said that like 20 times, but this happens.
The Dark Emperor races Castle Pandemonium, the fortress of the Lord of Hell, to start a new empire. Leon agrees to join the party at Furion's behest, and they set out to prepare for the final battle.
We've had one final dungeon, yes, but what about second final dungeon?
What about third breakfast? After returning to Diced to earn the Excalibur, literally you just get handed the Excalibur, you don't earn it. Treasure Sword of the Dragoons, the party fights its way through the Jade Passage, entering Pandemonium from underneath as all other forms of approach are impossible. Inside the castle, the party fights its way through several of the Emperor's most powerful minions, including an undead Borgin, and several Gotoses. But again, he could just be getting resurrected as, they're all dead anyways. Yeah. En route to the Emperor's throne at the top of the tower, a fierce battle ensues.
And again, I do want to mention once again that it is in this castle that the goddamn encounter rate is insane. It's insane. I swear to God, I never thought I was going to get through that damned final dungeon because it just kept getting into random encounter after random encounter. Every 2 steps, it was a random encounter. I at one point, I literally just wanted to heave the PlayStation Portable right against the fucking wall.
And not to mention every other fight is a fight with a golem that lasts forever.
Or, in my case, all of my party was decked out in Genji gear because I had exploited the snowmobile minigame. And apparently the Genji gear does not fare well against undead or any characters that can do the HP sap when they attack. So the fucking, just my party is getting just demolished because all of them are wearing this Genji gear, and the fucking undead and all the creatures that can actually do the HP sap just getting demolished. I think Leon died about 50 times.
Fun fact about my playthrough, yeah, well, fuck Leon. Leon, by the time you got him, was so freaking useless, I didn't bother leveling him at all.
Yeah.
Me neither.
I didn't either, and like I said, I was speedrunning, so he was actually... His technical stats, for the most part, were better than my party, but he sucked where it counted. He didn't have agility.
Yeah. My playthrough, I got so ticked off at the final dungeon that basically I skipped the floor where you get the Masamune because I had 2 blood swords and I knew the Emperor was going to go down with those 2 blood swords. I didn't need the Masamune. I just said, you know what? Let's just get this over with as fast as possible. And even on the freaking top floor where they might turn off the encounters to let some suspense build up. Nope. Every 2 steps.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hilariously, I did not get into a battle on the top floor until I was 2 steps away from Mateus.
What really pisses me off is those fucking death knights.
Oh, the death knights are assholes.
Oh my fucking god, man. Every time they hit me, it was like for 3,000 plus damage. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Fuck you. Those goddamn corals, or however you pronounce their names, the fucking stupid piece of shit cats, they fucking cast that blaster spell that stunned Leon every time. And then they do a 1-hit kill on him. Because apparently, if you're stunned, 1 hit is all it takes to kill you.
My goodness.
Yeah. I swear to God, I uttered more curse words than there are words in the English dictionary.
A pro tip to anybody who's playing for the first time, play the Origins version, because I actually didn't have any of the problems he's talking about. And the exploits are left in play where you can do the multi-use command. So the only problem with the Origins version, while we're at it, is that they're talking about getting the Genji and Masamune from the Toad game. Doesn't work for us playing the Origins version. Sorry, we get Hermes and unicorn horns because they're fucking useful.
Yeah. Womp 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 womp.
Any whoosies, let's wrap this up. Mike, you want to?
A fierce battle ensues as the Emperor attempts to destroy the last hope of the Resistance. Despite his powerful spells and his ability to call down meteors, Firion and the others defeat him for good. They return to Castle Finn, where Hilda, Gordon, Nellie, Layla, and Paul all wait to congratulate the party on the victory. In the battle's aftermath, life begins anew for everyone. However, Leon takes his leave of them, feeling that too much has happened between them for him to stay. Maria protests, but Firion says that they will be waiting when Leon is ready to return. With the war's end, the monsters called from hell vanish without a trace, and the world returns to peace, eventually to forget the bitter memories, save for the efforts of the young heroes who saved them all, and of course, for the poor bastards that actually play through this fucking piece of shit.
Then there's the solo rebirth plot, but we don't have to get into that.
Well, you can real quick if you want to, Ryu. I mean, it's real brief. I mean, we don't have to read this word for word. If you can summarize.
So basically, Minmu wakes up in the dead and doesn't realize that he's dead. He meets Scott, who is now a playable character. They find Joseph. They fight Borgen again, and then start looking. They find Rickard, who's fighting the Roundworm, who they help him. He then joins the party. They learn they're in the afterlife, like they knew, and then they learn that. Essentially, they have to fight the Ultima weapon after trying to find why weird shit's going on in the afterlife.
Which, by the way, the Ultima weapon is a fucking bastard.
Yes.
You can't fucking hit him. He's almost impossible to hit, and even if you do hit him, you're doing it for like 150 HP, and he's got like 15,000, and he's impervious to magic. So that's a long-ass fight if you stay alive long enough to get through it.
Yeah, so then they go into the Unknown Palace, which is Pandemonium by a different name, basically. They get, essentially, signature items, Stardust Rod, Wild Rose, Bracers, and Wyvern Lance. Then they meet the Light Emperor, who asks to be forgiven for his dark actions. He tells them he was split into 2 entities, and that Furion defeated his dark half. He explains that they are in Araboth, the passage of heaven, and they can rest in peace. The four are led to believe this, but the subconscious souls of their living friends appear before him and tell them that the Elite Emperor is full of shit. Recover their lost will to fight and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, and just to throw this out here too, the Soul of Rebirth is actually not available in the Origins version of the game or even in the original version of the game. It was added originally to the Dawn of Souls version of the game on Game Boy Advance and was also rolled over to the 20th anniversary edition on PSP.
Yep.
Another reason to play the Origins versions, kiddies.
You don't have to do Soul of Rebirth.
You don't.
Yeah.
No, it's just something that adds, it's a little bit of side story, adds a little bit to the mythology.
The story might be interesting to look at, but again, if it's the same gameplay, I don't care for it.
It definitely is.
It's also,
still...
even for this game, it's hard mode to an LP.
Wow.
Yeah, it's basically Final Fantasy IV ramped up to extreme level.
Keep saying this like Final Fantasy IV is the hardest game in the series, and my brain just keeps going.
Everybody says that, and
I don't. You know,
in
maybe they do, and maybe I just never processed that because it was literally the first RPG I ever played, and my frame of reference is broken.
Well, I mean, here's just to throw this out to you without derailing us too far. I think a lot of the reason why people feel Final Fantasy IV is so damn difficult is because of how grindy it is to actually grind up levels. It's especially in the early going. I mean, you don't get very much in the way of experience.
But you don't need all that much in the way of experience.
Just to put it in perspective, as somebody who kind of caught the series in the middle, my first one was actually Final Fantasy VI. I can tell you that it might not be that 4 is necessarily all that difficult, so much as every other Final Fantasy, except for 2, is a motherfucking cakewalk. There, I used it 2 times for you.
There you go, JT. There you go. So, what do we think about the story on the whole, gentlemen?
I actually liked it. I mean, for what it was simple, it was enjoyable, it was one of the 2 decent qualities of the game. It wasn't anything great. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it was at least a story.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy didn't have so much a story as
a bunch of fetch quests.
Yeah. A D&D module, as Ryu put it.
This was as opposed to a module. This was an adventure path. There was a story. There was a beginning, a middle, and end. There were NPCs. So it's not the most complex story. It's not homebrew, which is a great thing. We're going to get into the homebrew later, and it's going to be weird, and some of it's going to be magical realm, which is a meme most of you probably don't understand, but essentially it means fetishes and weird. And yes, we're going to get into that, but not now. Thank God. But yeah, no, I like what it was trying to do, and I like when it actually succeeded when it did it again in 4. Because I love 4 and I like 2. But I'm going to be the first to admit that they went, we did that thing too. Let's do it again in 4. Yeah. To the point of wholesale stealing of names and elements. Like the Dark Knight and the Dragoon Highwind and Mysidia.
Arguably, Final Fantasy IV did them better.
It did.
Palamon Toft became Palamon Porum.
Yep. Yes, that was another thing I was going to point out. Sid and being the airship was Sid and the airship, and he became a much better character for repeatedly not dying. He's still one of my favorite Sids. Final Fantasy IVs, not 2s.
Yeah.
For me, Final Fantasy 2 story on the whole is definitely one of the highlights of playing the game. I mean, it's certainly not perfect, and it's not without its moments where you're just genuinely like, what the serious fuck?
I would say, though, that it's better than 3s.
We haven't got to 3 yet,
I know.
Ryu. Come on.
I know we haven't got to 3, and that's why I'm not going to go into detail until then. But I think it's more coherent and better explained than 3s. 3 on the whole is a better game, but 2 is the better story.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, having just played through the first two games here, I mean, Final Fantasy II leaps and bounds is better than Final Fantasy I's story by far. It's more glued together, if you will. It feels like a complete story, unlike Final Fantasy I, which was a bunch of fetch quests.
Yeah.
So, there are truly moments in Final Fantasy II that are just beautiful. I'm sorry.
So go ahead, but there's an interesting point to bring up with the Saga series, the first three games in them, where they managed to have a very compelling plot and completely customizable characters by having the plot not be about your main characters. It's about the people you meet.
Interesting.
Which I think also was done better than 3, which sort of just has them as backdrops for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say about just the some of the story being beautiful. I love the scene with I lost their name. I'm sorry. Which one's the one that the brother that dies?
Scott.
Scott. Okay, yeah. I love that scene. It's really well done, and it invokes a sense of sadness. I love the scene where Minwu sacrifices himself for the not so Ultima tome. I love the last wyvern, the passing of the last wyvern. I thought that was really gripping. I mean, again, we're not talking like Hollywood style gripping or anything like that, but it touches you in the right way, I think.
I think another good point, for as comedic as the crushing and the giant boulder trap is, the Joseph's death scene is actually very well done, which is why they brought it back for Final Fantasy IX. Not the actual sequence, but they referenced it when you're talking with Ramu.
Yeah, it's basically a ripoff of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, no, it's not the actual method of death, which is totally, a Raiders joke. But it's the way that his death and sacrifice is handled.
Mr. Wright actually mentioned that to me on Facebook, that the story that Ramu tells in Final Fantasy IX is the story of Joseph.
Joseph, yeah.
So,
interesting side note. What did moving on from the story here, getting into a little bit of talk about the music of the game. I thought, again, for an early Final Fantasy, the music was fantastic. Of course, again, I will say that Uematsu is truly the master, and the music was truly one of the highlights of Final Fantasy II, along with the story. It's really too bad that the two of them just cannot save the shitty-ass leveling system. But the music was beautiful. JT, you want to take it?
The music, like I said, belied how terrible the game was as a gameplay goes, because again, some of my favorite pieces. Now, I have to say, some of the earlier tracks I was not impressed by. The first dungeon theme with Semet Falls and all that, it was bland. I didn't care for it. The Rebel hideout theme is okay, and it's nice and iconic. It's good classic Final Fantasy, but it's kind of whatever.
I like the overworld map.
The overworld map is gorgeous because it's so different. Final Fantasy I's overworld is, we're going on an adventure, hooray! Final Fantasy II is, we're fucked, I hope we don't get too badly destroyed.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. It's hopeless and hopeful at the same time. It's very soft, very eerily peaceful.
You have to rescue a princess from a giant death chip.
Yeah, that happens. The boss...
I understand you were mentioning the music, but then I just sort of... It struck me just how Star Wars the Dreadnought sequence was. And obviously Star Wars is based off the Hidden Fortress. You get the Star Wars impression and not the Hidden Fortress impression off of the Dreadnought.
Yeah, but that's only because Star Wars is more well known.
No, it's not that. Because I've seen the Hidden Fortress. I love myself some Kurosawa.
I'm not disrespecting Kurosawa. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying Star Wars is by far the more pop culturally relevant, which is why it invokes feelings of Star Wars.
Oh, you're saying that's why they did it specifically?
Yes. Right.
I was talking about why, despite all the elements except for technology level being the same, it gave me more of the Star Wars rather than the Kurosawa, but it might just have been the very flippant nature of the rescue. The Hidden Fortress was a little more serious.
the almost like it was a side task. It's just like, oh, hey, we're rescuing you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, right.
Not even a boss.
Kill the monarch that we've sworn our field to. That would not be cool. I guess we'll rescue you.
The boss themes that they add, the one that was originally there that they remastered, and there was one Battle B that I think they added for the Origins version. I might be mistaken about that. Both of those,
either the Wonder Swan or the Origins, and I think it was Origins, and then they also used it for Dawn of Souls.
Well, there you go. Those boss themes are the main boss theme is actually so beautiful that it rivals some of the higher entries in boss battle music. It rivals 8 for me. It rivals 9. It definitely rivals 9 for me. I don't really care for 9's boss battle theme. It doesn't hit like a 6 level of brilliance, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's definitely worth a listen to.
Yes.
And again, apart from a Tchaikovsky diversion, the soundtrack overall is quite nice. I actually really enjoyed it. And I like the music in Pandemonium and the Jade Passage. It kind of built up tension. I just wish the dungeons had been up to par.
So,
yes.
Not the music itself, but speaking of Jade Passage and all that, I'm trying to remember, were there any secret passages in the original Final Fantasy? There were a butt ton of them in this game, and that was something that was a common gimmick in all the other games up through 6, I should say.
The closest thing they had to a secret passage in the original Final Fantasy was like the steps in the ice cavern that you would have to take, and then the holes that would drop beneath you. I can't recall one where you actually walk through the wall.
Yeah, and that was just another thing that I sort of is, for all of the weird missteps that this game does make, it literally was just sort of like, it was a half-cooked idea, but all the ingredients that it made fit together to make something even better. So it just sort of like had all the right ideas, but it didn't have.
There were the future games expounded on them and made them better. Yeah,
it was an awkward and clumsy baby step to actually walking.
Yeah, I gotta say this podcast. I'm thinking of this because Ryu is sort of the odd man out here. I'm thinking that I'm looking to the future, and I know that this is going to happen again, where it's going to be one of us really likes it, and the other two are not huge fans. Like Final Fantasy VIII, I'm going to be the odd man out, and in Final Fantasy X-2, Mike's going to be the odd man out because I know me and Ryu really like that game.
Job system.
Okay, but I have to ask you. Between 10-2 and 2, which would you rather play?
I would rather hang myself with a necktie out of my closet. All right,
we're going to hold you to that.
Okay, what if you could play 10-2 on mute?
If I could play 10-2 on mute, it's playable. But
okay, so just play it on mute.
Here's the thing. That's really not my only beef with it, and I really don't want to get into it
on
this podcast
until 10-2 rolls around. 3.5 years from now.
And let me put it to you this way, guys. Either I'm a glutton for punishment.
You are.
Or I somewhat enjoy actually playing Final Fantasy II, because this is like the 18th time I've played Final Fantasy II. So, just saying.
That is interesting from somebody who I'm pretty confident is going to give it the lowest possible rating. I can see the appeal of the grind because I play MMOs. I've played Final Fantasy XIV. I played RuneScape, and I get the appeal of grinding, but for me, Final Fantasy should not be about the grind. Like, there were games that handled this exact kind of level system better. The Elder Scrolls had a very similar level system where you level skills individually, but because you were actually doing them, it was fun. You felt like you were on an adventure. I'm playing Morrowind, which has an incredibly low level up rate, and it's still fun to play. You can't take this kind of level system, I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure, Ryu says Saga does it well, and make it turn-based. I just don't see how it turns into fun. Because at least when I'm grinding levels in like Final Fantasy 7 or 8 or 9 or 6 or 5 or any of the other Final Fantasies, I can see clear growth.
Yes.
By the way, minor update, because while we're talking about grinding, I have an update of my 4 Thieves challenge. I spent weeks grinding levels for my 4 Thieves challenge. I got them all up to about level 18. Even that painful experience was at least I could see the progress I was making. I could clearly see my characters getting stronger. This I did not feel gave us the same feeling whatsoever.
Totally agree.
Well, this has been borderline hate speech from me and you, man.
No, and to give you at least a partial explanation of how the later Saga games do it better. So the biggest change for the first few sagas is they introduce 2 major components. 1, weapons with a durability, and 2, weapons with weird as fuck special abilities. So, it's not just hit the guy, get your strength up. It's hit the guy with the chainsaw with an attempt to automatically kill him, or at least, perfectly destroy the guy. It's the game is a lot more frenetic in its combats. You're fighting much bigger swaths of enemies, and they do a lot more damage. So the game is actually much more tense. But the penalty for death is not as big, especially in Final Fantasy Legends 2, where for like half of the game, if you die in battle, you literally show up before the god Odin, who goes, "Right, that was bad. Try it again." And then makes you promise to fight him in battle one day, which, as a child, I tried to go through that entire game without wiping once, and then had a very disappointing sort of fight against him because it didn't actually say anything different. The rest of the game is awesome. It's just I'm surprised that they didn't throw in extra dialogue for "Who the hell are you guys?" But it also throws in stuff like robots and monsters who react differently, to have different level up systems, and have different weird ass abilities. So the problem with Final Fantasy II isn't that it's weird; it's that it's nowhere near weird enough. And so it just becomes mundane, and I like it. I don't love it.
How did we got? Speaking of weird, how do we feel about the main villain of Final Fantasy II?
He was there.
He actually doesn't have much of a presence.
No,
which
he
is
doesn't.
interesting because
he
has a hell of a lot more of a fanfic presence in Japan. Like, because of his weird design, they've done a lot with him. They did a hell of a lot with him in Dissidia, based on the fact that he's a schemer, mostly from the Soul of Rebirth plot.
I was gonna say he's Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah.
Ultimecia stole his hairstyle.
Wait, are you saying that Palamecia is a ripoff of Palpatine?
Could be.
Well, I never.
Could be.
In this game that is chock full of references to Star Wars, why would they rip off the main villain of Star Wars? Who incidentally also just showed up at the very end, but at least Ian McDiarmid had screen presence.
Yeah.
I know, right? And some of the best lines in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mostly because it was Ian McDiarmid delivering them. Like,
your faith in your friends is yours.
Which on its own is but he just delivers it with venom.
Hell yes.
The
scene when he's trying to get Luke to force grab his fucking lightsaber, and he's kind of seducing him and stuff, it's just like,
oh, look at me, I'm the Lamia
It's
Queen.
amazing.
And you know what makes that scene amazing? The freaking John Williams score backing up the movie.
Fuck yes.
And not fucking Swan Lake.
Didn't you know? John Williams just subbed
I'm
in
still
Swan...
pissed about
John
that.
Williams also tried to sub in Swan Lake, but they caught it because he didn't stay at lunch long enough.
But no, the thing is with the Emperor, I have to give props as far as a villain goes, because as far as villains who actually succeed in destroying the world goes, he came the closest to it. He wiped half the towns off the map.
I don't know about that, man. Kefka, dude.
Kefka.
Okay, Kefka is still the king of destroying the world, no question.
Actually, no. Ultimisia is. But
Ultimisia didn't destroy the world. She just put it on pause.
No. She was in the process of destroying all reality. You just managed to unt. So,
okay,
give her a half point.
Fine, we'll give her a half point. We take away 50 because even I, who love the game, have to admit that was the stupidest plot line.
Okay, JT, let's not get too deep into it here.
Let's not get too deep into it. But as far as the Emperor goes, he dealt damage. He wasn't much of a person, but as a looming threat, he was actually pretty intimidating because you would never know when you come out. Because I came out of the Mysidia Tower, and then half the world was destroyed. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh crap, that happened.
Yeah.
Also, it's interesting to know that until that point, his goal was not to destroy the world. Destroy the world was plan B. Destroy the world was fuck. If you're not going to let me have it, nobody gets a goddamn. These are my toys. Let me play with them, or fuck you.
Yep. Yep.
And how awesome is it that we have a boss that literally drags his way out of hell to fight you? I mean, that's kind of cool.
Yep. It definitely is.
So that's another thing Final Fantasy IV shamelessly steals, but does better, I think.
Ryu. Oh, go ahead.
Mostly in that the explanation is less hokey and has a less of a plot hole. Because, you killed him once and you sent him to hell, and then you killed him again. Wait, shit, he's gonna come back again. At least you utterly destroy, officially utterly destroy, maybe, Zeramus's malice.
Real quick, Ryu, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the influence of the Ultima series on Final Fantasy II.
Okay, so the interesting thing, we didn't touch on this, but a core mechanic of the RPG side, not the fighty, but the actual looking around, is that you will get keywords from people that you will learn, and you can ask people about those.
We totally bypassed that. I totally forgot.
Yeah. And this is a mechanic that was used way back in early RPGs, but especially in Ultima, where you had to find a topic and then start asking the right people about a topic to find another prompt to ask somebody else. And so it actually, both of these come from an exploration. And that was, again, like has been said many times, it didn't quite pan out because you're still on a very linear actual plot, even though you can wander everywhere. But there's at least some manner of investigation. There's a way to ask people about things and get information again, rather than, hope that it's the NPC's last set of dialogue that has the important information if you accidentally skip over it.
Yeah.
And even then, they don't always, do it 100% correctly. But I like the idea that it's a better way of handling event flags than just talking to the right person.
Right.
Because it's less arbitrary.
Yeah, I thought the word memory system was really neat. And it's actually the only time in the Final Fantasy series that they actually have this specific type of word memory system. Basically, like Ryu is describing, there are certain keywords throughout Final Fantasy II that the game opens up and enables you to memorize that word and then bring it back up to other characters in the game and to get their responses and their reactions to that word, or even to produce items based on that word. So it's one of the ways that Final Fantasy II is certainly unique.
I just had another odd thought. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it felt superfluous to me. I mean, it felt like something they did just because they could do it. I don't think they did enough with it. And having to keep the quest items in your inventory was annoying, even after you would already remove them just so you would have the flag to ask about that item.
Right.
That was irritating because I was trying to fill my party full of elixirs and stuff like that, and I couldn't do it. So, but mine that's a relatively minor gripe. The idea itself is kind of cool, and like we've seen other games do this, Ultima, Elder Scrolls. But again, I mean, you could have accomplished the exact same thing with a branching dialogue tree, which would have been arguably more ambitious for that time.
I don't think they could have managed a branching dialogue tree.
Right.
And in fact, this is basically the first example of a branching dialogue tree, but you have to you only have a certain number of topics that you can possibly ask, because they didn't have the space for all of the dialogue options.
Right, not enough memory.
But no, and another odd thing I just realized was that in the original FF2, there are 8 playable characters, which is the same as how many playable characters there were in the first several Ultima games, especially in the most well-known Ultima game, Ultima 4, which is all about how the 8 virtues and what. And that's got me on a whole topic that I don't even want to speak on yet, because I'm literally in the fomenting stages of this hypothesis, but it has to do with the fact that in Dissidia, Firion is depicted with 8 weapons, 7 of which represent other characters.
Interesting. Huh. Okay, well, I think with that said here, I think we're about ready to put a bookmark in our retrospective of Final Fantasy II. Anybody else got anything before we get into our closing remarks and ratings for the game?
That includes you, listeners, so speak up now. Okay, good.
I take it nobody else has anything.
No, I think I've gotten everything I need to say out apart from my closing remarks.
All right, well, let's go ahead and give this game a rating then. We'll start with you, JT. Go ahead.
Okay, so my final thoughts. I wrote a nice little paragraph to explain why I'm giving this rating, as if you don't already know. The game gets points for being the second Final Fantasy ever made, and for introducing many of the staples of the series that we know and love. This was the first game to truly give Final Fantasy a unique personality that wasn't ripped straight from D&D, it was just ripped from Star Wars instead. It introduced us to Cid, Chocobos, and Dragoons. However,
and Dark Knights.
Just because... And Dark Knights.
And so many other random elements.
And we totally forgot to mention Chocobos, too. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, Chocobos were there. Appear in this game. They're in random things. They're not plot important. You'll be very happy when you find one.
Pretty much. I mean, I found only the one Chocobo forest, and
there's like 2.
You will use a Chocobo exactly one time if you play the way I play, which is to get away from Cassian. That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much why they were added.
However, just because you innovate doesn't mean you succeed. The game is held back by an incredibly frustrating level system that seems to punish grinding just as much as it supposedly rewards it. Enemy strengths seem random at time, most of the dungeons are uninspired labyrinths, even those that have cool concepts such as the Cyclone and Jade Passage are just really boring cookie-cutter dungeons.
Yep.
The open world was ambitious but not fully realized and resulted in many missteps and tons of backtracking.
And a non-completing universe.
Yeah, exactly. Even with good story and music, you can't polish a turd. And this game was mostly a painful experience. I'm going to give her 2 out of 5.
Pedant moment, you can polish turds. They get shiny.
They prove that on Mythbusters, I know, I don't care.
Ryu, how about you?
Okay, so I do think that the fact that this is the second Final Fantasy game is an important, thing to remember. This came out in the late 80s, about 3/4 of the way through the NES's shelf life, and it was only the second ever RPG that Square had ever made. So it doesn't do a hell of a lot of things expertly. It tries a lot of things that it fails at. But I like that it's trying. I like that it's trying to do something new. I like its plot. I like music. I like what its battle system becomes. And I very much appreciate, not just for being a step in the Final Fantasy game, but being the father of the Saga series, which I am a diehard fan of. Nearly all of them. Let's not talk about Unlimited Saga. Let's just not. But no, I do think that while it is definitely not the best Final Fantasy out there, I've played worse. I've played a lot worse, and I would not say that this is even in my bottom 5. I think this is actually overall fairly average. So I'm gonna give this, because we can't really do half stars, I'm gonna give this 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5 for Ryu. Okay, so
when we meet the ones, you will hear about the ones.
So for me, for Final Fantasy II, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with it. I love the music. I love the story. I love the characters, in fact. I fucking loathe the level system. And as much as I have tried to get myself over how bad the leveling system is, it looms over the rest of the game. It ruins what otherwise is actually a very admirable shot by Square to actually to make a terrific predecessor to the original Final Fantasy. For me, it's too ruined by the piss poor gameplay. I have to give this thing 2 stars as well. Now,
wow, that's
that
impressive.
is not to say that I feel like Final Fantasy II is utterly unplayable, because it's not. I would still recommend people play Final Fantasy II, if only just to get the experience of seeing the Dragoon for the first time, the Chocobo for the first time, experiencing Cid, experiencing the great story, which is heavily influenced by Star Wars, as we've mentioned before. There are some very cool moments in this game. It's just the gameplay just doesn't allow me to rate it any higher.
If you want the sort of shit that this game is trying to do, but with better gameplay, go Saga.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, just go to Saga. It's good.
Any specific Saga game you would recommend, Ryu, to start with?
Final Fantasy Legend 2, Romancing Saga 3, Saga Frontier, and Saga Frontier 2. Those are the absolute highlights. Final Fantasy 3 is good, but that's actually...
please direct it to Ryu.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy Legends 3 is good, but you actually play that if you want a Final Fantasy experience. Because that's the redheaded stepchild of the Saga series. It actually has proper level ups and dedicated stats. It's weird, man. It really feels like the Saga creator went, wait. People don't made basically a Saga game for Final Fantasy game. So we'll do them a solid and do the reverse. And it's actually a very competent Final Fantasy game. It just doesn't feel very Saga. It feels a little too normal. That's a plot with time travel world flooding.
Good lord.
So, we didn't get any feedback to the last episode of the retrospective, except for one piece that I saw on YouTube that I thought I'd go ahead and address real quick. This person mentioned that he would have liked to seen some video to go with the retrospective, and as much as I would like to offer video for the retrospective, it's I don't have a way of recording some of these Final Fantasies to put on the web, and B, I don't have the video editing experience to do so. So as much as I would love to do something like that, it's just beyond my realm of expertise at this point. That's not to say that
it would definitely be to Pixel, who does have those and is in charge of the YouTube channel. But we're not going to ask him to do that. If he wants to throw some weird ass, if he wants to throw, 12 hours of a, puppy yawning on this, he can, but that's not our call.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to maybe doing eventually what are they called, a Uplay? Is that what you call them? Or Let's Play, yeah. I'm not opposed to doing a Let's Play with maybe some of the later games of the series that we could actually do video for, but
which reminds me, I really need to get back
for
to
these early games.
5 LP. Oh well.
That said, I do want to go ahead and leave you guys with a question for the listenership, and actually, in this case, we're going to have two. And since JT was actually the one that came up with them, JT, why don't you go ahead and give out the questions for the listenership this episode?
Sure thing. Stuff that should be very relevant if you've been paying attention to this. What'll probably end up being an hour and 30 minutes after the editing discussion. First off, which Final Fantasy leveling system has been your favorite? There's a lot of them out there because they're not all just levels.
There's standard leveling,
sphere grids,
yeah,
there's
the
jobs.
spirit orbs, there's the job system, there's the job system where only HP.
There's the junction system, which is absolutely ruined.
There's the variations on the job system, because there's the Final Fantasy job system, the 5 job system, the 10-2 job system, the tactics job system, the advanced job system, the Zodiac system, the advanced 2 job system.
For you internationals.
Whatever the hell system that Wings used. I don't even know what to call it. The Final Fantasy Adventure system, which is basically just standard leveling, but also includes weapon levels.
And of course, the thumb-breaking Final Fantasy II level system, which, if you've been listening to this podcast and we haven't convinced you why you're wrong to like it, let us know.
Let's see.
But
still fun.
We'll have to disagree on that, sir.
Yeah.
But and the second question, which do you think is more important specifically for Final Fantasy? Do you care more about the gameplay or the story? And I'll tell you, for my 2 cents, it varies from game to game.
Yes.
I play Final Fantasy VI for the story. I play 10-2 for the gameplay.
Well, what about 13?
13 I play because I hate myself. No, actually, the story's okay. Actually, I really do like the 13 story.
While the story is incredibly difficult to follow unless you read all the data logs and stuff, the gameplay for Final Fantasy 13, I think, is a blast.
Yeah,
I have so much fun with
13 has a good plot told very poorly, and a very fun battle system. And the 2 sequels have very good battle systems, but increasingly stupid stories.
I prefer 13-2. 13-2 and Lightning Returns are far superior to the original 13, in my opinion. No. But again, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Not disputing this in the slightest. The stories are just stupid, but they're better because they're stupider.
Okay. Oh. All right, so yeah, please feel free to hit us up at lifestreampod@gmail.com and give us your responses to those questions or any kind of comments you have about the episode. Also, feel free to hit us up on the episode posts on the Lifestream.net forums. I post an episode post for every episode of the podcast. I encourage everyone to go to the Lifestream. If you're not a member, go ahead and get registered for the forums. Things are really going to start ramping up at the Lifestream with the coming of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on there that we're getting ready to introduce a lot of very cool changes. So it's an exciting time to get involved, and we definitely do want to hear from you. Also, please leave us feedback on iTunes. To this point, I have received exactly 1 piece of feedback on iTunes, and would really like to hear from you guys and get some ratings on iTunes, so please do that.
You gotta help old Mike out. The wolf is at old Mike's door.
Our next game for the Final Fantasy Retrospective series will be, of course, the one, the only Final Fantasy III, which is the introduction to the job system.
Jorb!
And I'm sorry?
Jorb! You have a Jorb Homestar?
I have actually already started my playthrough of Final Fantasy III, and I've played like an hour and a half so far. Oh, I'm sorry?
I was just saying, I need to check and see where my last playthrough is, because I think it's pretty close to the beginning, but it might be a lot farther.
Yeah, I'm about an hour and a half in, and I was reminded almost from minute 1 why I like Final Fantasy 3 so well. So yeah, I'm very happy to have moved on from Final Fantasy 2.
And yours truly is a complete virgin to the game. I have played every other Final Fantasy at least a little bit before this retrospective began, except for 11, which doesn't count. but I have never had any experience whatsoever with the original Final Fantasy III, so this is going to be a new experience for me. And I am playing the PSP version, for those of you who want to know.
Which I think still has the same exploits as the 3DS version, but it has less with the Mognet bullshit.
Yeah.
Which means you can still job grind, and you still have the problem like in FF2 with the magic that you don't know how close you are to leveling your class when you're in battle. But at least there's a certain number of actions that you can take that will make sure you always get a job level up.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a while since I played 3. In fact, it's been like since 2006 when it first came out on DS. But if I recall correctly, when your job levels up, does it not do like a little bell tone in the middle of battle when your job levels up? Yeah, I thought so. So there's your indicator.
The benefits until, after battle, but you do get the notification. And honestly, just guard, because that gets you JP. Anyway. Like, spend maybe an hour finding starting jobs, 1099, especially Monk, because that'll let you switch between them immediately, and you always want to level up as Monk when you can. Because HP is the only stat that does not change when you change classes.
Right.
Nice.
Okay. So yeah, I think I'm going to, because we're rolling into the holidays. We've got Thanksgiving coming up next week, and we've got of course Christmas and New Year's coming up. I am going to extend out our playtime for Final Fantasy III for a little bit longer than what we've been doing. I'm going to set this for 60 days, and if we finish it sooner than that, then we can certainly reconvene and do our pod for Final Fantasy III sooner. But at this point, I am going to go ahead and set the date for January the 18th.
Hey, right before my birthday.
Ooh.
Yep.
We'll have a cake ready.
Yeah. Victory cake.
All right. So that said, we'd again like to thank you very much for listening. Take care, and always protect the crystals. Music on this podcast is courtesy and copyright of Square Enix.